Hey everybody, it's Josh. It's a beautiful fall day here in Kentucky. I really probably should be outside enjoying the weather, but I wanted to go ahead and put a quick video together. We had a question in the comments on another video that I posted about single brood management. Now, those of you that have seen my other videos have probably noticed that I only use single deeps or single brood management throughout my apiary. And there's a reason for that. And I thought I'd kind of go over the pros and the cons if you decide that you want to run single brood management throughout your apiary, so you can make whatever decision that you feel is right. So when you talk about single brood management, what that really means is that for each hive that you have in your apiary, you're only using one deep. So this is a standard deep body that you would have 10 frames in here for the bees. Anything beyond that, using two of these or more, double deep, triple deep for really large hives, obviously would be something different than just single brood management or single deep. So just I guess to kind of go over some of the advantages of single brood management. Number one, it's less expensive, so you don't have to buy as much equipment. You only have to buy one deep, and you only have to have 10 frames for the queen to lay throughout, and for the bees to be in at least throughout the brood chamber. It's cheaper to feed. You don't have to feed as much. If you have two deeps or three deeps worth of bees, you could have tens and tens of thousands of bees in there. It's going to require a lot more food. Another advantage, it's cheaper to treat for mites. So a lot of these mite treatments will go by, whether it's oxalic acid or Apigard or Apivar or you name it, Mitoway quick strips, whatever your mite treatment of choice is, a lot of times goes off of how many deeps you have in the hive. Whether it's a single, double, or triple, you have to use more miticide, whatever it may be. So your expenses go up from that standpoint. I also think it's just easier to manage, which is why I switched, quite frankly, not really due to cost savings or anything. But I just think overall, it's a lot easier to work with a single deep than it is two or three. It saves my back. When you're doing inspections and you have to lift off those heavy brood chambers or those deeps each time to get to the bottom one, that can hurt your back after a while. I just think it's easier to do an inspection. So I only have to look through 10 frames within the brood chamber. If I want to find my queen, it's easier to find my queen. It's a lot quicker than going through 20 or 30 frames that she may be on. I know I can find my queen relatively pretty quick if I need to. Let's say I want to do a walk-away split, or let's say the queen is underperforming and I need to pinch her. Whatever the reason is, if you need to find the queen, it's a lot quicker and easier to find one with single brood management, right? So there's only 10 frames to go through. Now, some of the critics will say, well, there's not enough space for the queen to lay in. Well, I don't have a frame nearby. I probably should have grabbed one. But if you look at your standard frame, don't quote me on this, but I think each side is approximately 2,000 to 3,000 cells on each side. It may be 3,000 total for both sides, so it may be 1,500 per side. But that's 3,000 eggs, 3,000 spots that the queen can lay in on just one frame. And a single deep like this holds 10 frames. So you do the math, right? You can still get pretty large colonies within just a single deep. No, it's not going to be as large as if you had double deeps or triple deeps for enormous colonies. But I've yet to find a reason why I need to have a massive colony. Some people say, that's another criticism, well, you won't get as much honey from if you just rock single brood management versus double or triple, because the colony will be smaller. That is true. The colony will be smaller. But this spring, I pulled 50 or 60 pounds of honey off just one colony. So it was a single deep like this, and I had 3 supers on top of that single deep. And that was plenty of honey. Now, I mean, I'm not a commercial beekeeper. I'm just a backyard enthusiast. I have 10 hives currently. So my primary goal is not to make honey and sell honey. I just do it as a sort of um, ancillary sort of thing. You know, I just enjoy keeping bees. So the main reason that I'm a beekeeper is because I think to be a good steward of pollinators is a good thing. And I want to help ensure their survival. I want them to proliferate throughout Oldham County and Kentucky and anywhere else. And I just want to do my part to be a good beekeeper. You know, wax production, you know, if I make candles or use wax for anything else, or honey, is just an added perk, an added benefit. And quite frankly, it's a lot of work. I mean, it's a lot of work to extract honey. It's a lot of work to process beeswax. That's not the main reason that I'm in this. I'm not going to quit my day job. So this is just, you know, a hobby for me, right? So if I can get 40, 50, 60 pounds of honey off a single brood management, I don't care. I don't care if I'm missing out on another 20, 30, 40 pounds of honey because I don't have some massive colony. Those massive colonies, you know, can be difficult to work with. That's a lot of bees that you're having to go through. That's a lot of bees to force out of the supers. You know, the larger the colonies, generally speaking, the more difficult or more effort they can be to manage and to work with. And that's just not something I'm interested in. So my very first year of beekeeping, I had some double deeps. I've actually never had a triple deep colony, but I have some friends that have. And again, they're creating more space in an effort to prevent swarming, which I'll touch on here in a minute as well. But my very first year of beekeeping, I did double deeps, and I just found it a little cumbersome. As with all things with beekeeping, you have to do what works best for you. And this so far is what works best for me. I'm not going to go out and say that I will never have double or triple deeps again. But right now, the advantages and the pros of rocking single brood management outweighs the cons, in my opinion. So let's talk about another con, and that's largely the biggest one that it comes to single brood management is you're going to have to deal with swarming a lot more. And I mean a lot more than somebody that has double or triple deeps. So that urge to swarm, you know, you're forcing all the bees and the queen and the brood in just one deep colony. Bees naturally, when they're building, they naturally want to go up. They want to go vertical rather than horizontal. I don't give the queen anywhere else to go but horizontal. And they will, the bees will, if that's all the space that you give them. But you think about it in sort of their natural habitat, a lot of honeybees will go inside of large trees, hollow trees. They build comb vertical, right, versus out horizontally. They'll still do it horizontally, but it's not their preference. But I force them to do it when it comes to single brood management. Well, if those bees draw out all 10 frames and that queen has 10 frames to lay on, that's still plenty of space for the most part. Now, the exception is during a flow. So what will some beekeepers do during a flow that still only rocks single brood management? What they'll do is first thing in the springtime, they'll take their single deeps and they'll put a super on top of those. And they will not use a queen excluder. So what does that do? Well, number one, it gives more bee space, right? It gives more space for the bees to go up into that honey super. And it also gives your queen another area to lay in. Now, what will she do? Will she at first start to lay up there? Yeah, she might. And you've helped suppress that urge to swarm. The bees still may swarm anyway. I mean, all we're doing as beekeepers, you know, I like the analogy of like the gutter guards in a bowling alley, right? We're like the gutter guards. The bowling ball is still going to go where the bowling ball goes, but we're trying to guide it. And that's what we do as beekeepers. Bees are going to do what bees are going to do. But we can help steer them or guide them in a certain direction. So when you put that super on top of the deep in the springtime, you're giving the bees more space and you're giving the queen more space to go up in there and lay. At a certain point, once those bees hatch, okay, the bees then will backfill with honey, that space. And generally speaking, the queen would stay down below. I still don't do that. When I put the supers on in the springtime, I immediately put the queen excluder on. This is me personally, I do not want to have honey and comb that has had bee larvae and bee pupa inside of it. Once the bees hatch, there's like this brown sort of shell from the pupa that's left over. It doesn't really hurt anything, but if you ever want to sell comb honey, you know, aesthetics are important. You want that wax to be fresh. You want it to be new. You want it to sparkle, you know, be clear. and you want the honey that's inside it. You don't want to have any reason for someone to look at it and be like, oh, that's brown. I don't want to buy that, or I'm not interested in that, right? So I do not, as a general principle, let my queens lay up in honey supers. So I use queen excluders. Lots of beekeepers don't use queen excluders. I could do an entire video on the pros and cons of using a queen excluder. Some people call them honey excluders. I laugh at that because I use queen excluders on all of my hives, and I got, I don't know, 120 pounds of honey off of 2 hives this year that had queen excluders. So you call them honey excluders. I got more honey than I need, suit all my needs. So I'm again, personal preference, but for me, I use the queen excluder. So I'm not going to let that queen travel upside this box. So she's got to stay inside here. So what does that mean? Well, the urge to swarm is going to be triggered pretty heavily in the springtime. And usually it's early in the springtime. Once the bees start in the flow, once the bees start putting the nectar in there and curing it for honey and putting the pollen in there, that urge to swarm goes down significantly. Because now, again, they have something to stay for, right? But all bees naturally want to swarm. That's how they ensure the survival of their species. So my thought process is, you know what? If they swarm, they swarm. Then once again, I am helping to proliferate honeybees into nature, and I'm helping pollinators, and I'm helping them grow in numbers, right? Oftentimes, you've seen my apiary, it's surrounded by woods. The vast majority of the time, I can tell when one of my hives has swarmed because the numbers, will drop maybe by a factor of, by a half the population. That queen and that swarm will land in a tree or a branch right next to my apiary, and I just go collect them. And then if I don't want to continue to grow or increase the numbers in my apiary, then I can just put them in a nuke, and I can sell a nuke to somebody that wants to become a beekeeper. Or if somebody wants the genetics that are in my apiary and they want to buy a nuke off of me, that's fine too, right? So if they swarm, they swarm. If I catch them, great. If not, oh well. You know what? Even if bees swarm early in the springtime, the bees that are left behind can still make plenty of honey. So it's really not that big of a deal. I know beekeepers hate losing their bees that way, but I kind of have a different attitude about it. I'm just kind of indifferent. If they swarm, hey, I'm helping. I'm helping the pollinators. If I capture the swarm, great. If not, farewell. Good luck, girls. Hope you do well. So that's the biggest downside to single brood management, is that you have to deal with swarming more. Now, there's all sorts of ways that you can prevent swarming, but that requires frequent intervention. You're in the springtime, you're going through frames. If you find those queen cups, you can pinch all the queen cups to where they don't have any choice. But once that urge to swarm is triggered, generally the bees will keep making queen cells. They just want to swarm. But there's other methods for swarm prevention. You can Google it. You can look it up. Some beekeepers clip the wing on their queen, so the queen goes to take flight. She's unable to do so. She lands in the grass. The bees get all disoriented. They get confused. They go back to the hive. They raise a new queen. The queen in the grass usually just perishes, but you haven't lost all your bees. I don't do that. I don't clip my queen's wing, but that is a form of swarm prevention. Again, you could do an entire video on swarm preventative measures. I don't really do much to prevent swarms. It is what it is. I just deal with it as they happen. Some beekeepers choose to actively try to prevent the swarms. So if you decide to go with the single brood management, just understand and know that you're going to have to deal with swarming a lot more. What other benefits? So I talked about, it costs less money in equipment. The miticide treatment is going to save you money. It's just much easier overall maintenance, easier on your back. And what else? And then I guess the downsides really are potentially decreased honey production, and also much higher likelihood of swarming or having to deal with swarms more. With the equipment, your equipment stretches that much further because you don't have to buy that many more frames, or you don't have to buy that many more deeps. I have 2 or 3 times the amount of supers that I have deep bodies. So, really, it's to me, that's a huge advantage also. So if you're thinking about doing it, I would say, give it a try. That's to me, that's half the fun of beekeeping, and why a lot of engineers like myself get into beekeeping, because it has to do with problem solving, experimenting, trial and error. So I would say if you're thinking about it, go ahead and give it a try. Maybe just one or two of your highs. If you normally rock double deeps or triple deeps, just try it on one or two and see what happens. See if you like it. My second year of beekeeping is when I switched to single brood management. Never looked back. And I have yet to find a reason why I would want to go back to double or triple deeps. I just don't. And again, this is just my personal preference, the way I do things. Just like with all beekeeping, you have to find out what works best for you. And if you're a commercial beekeeper or somebody whose livelihood is dependent upon beekeeping, you probably don't want to do single hive management. You want to maximize honey production. You don't want your bees to swarm very often. You want to keep your bees. That's your livelihood. That's your money, right? And that's great. That's fine. That's not my primary objective. Different beekeepers get into beekeeping for different reasons. Some people get in it purely for the honey. Some people get in it for wax production. Some people get in it, they don't care about wax or honey. All they want to do is raise nukes and sell packages of bees. And that's why they get into it, right? So it really just depends on what your goals are, what you're trying to accomplish with beekeeping, and your own personal preferences and what you think might work best for you. But I would encourage anyone that's thinking about it to just give it a try and see what you think, see if you enjoy it, see if you find it easier. It is cheaper. I don't really think that's debatable. But I think it's easier on your back. It's easier to manage. And, to me, the benefits of all that and spending less money on mite treatments, the benefits of all that, to me, outweighs the negatives. But anyway, I hope that answered your question. I can't remember the name of the individual that posted, but I appreciate you asking the questions. And to the extent that I'm able to, I'll try to answer all your questions. And hopefully you all found this video beneficial, and it helps you in deciding whether or not you want to go switch over to single brood management. And I would love to hear in the comments, for those of you that do decide to switch, I would love to hear how it goes for you, or anything else that I may have missed. Please chime in with any other benefits or any other negatives that you've found with single brood management for those of you that have already tried it. And again, just, hope it works out well for you. Let me know, and I really appreciate you watching.